my colleagues and I spend a lot of time on. The second thing I would say, which is important, is, whatever Singapore's achievements are, they have been founded on social policies, much more than economic. Our strategies to do with education, with housing, and with promoting an inclusive workplace, and increasingly now, ensuring that we have adequate care, affordable and quality care for an older population. That's the foundation of Singapore. It's what gives us a unique social identity, particularly our neighborhoods and our housing strategies, but that's also what gives us confidence in the future. The economic strategies will have to be nimble, they will have to be responsive to a changing world environment, but they are founded on a social model that's still evolving, but which we see as central to what Singapore is about.
Thank you. Raghu, I want to ask you again, how might you dovetail short-term into long-term in India's financial sector? There was a report on Mumbai as an international financial center. There is a whole gift idea. We are at the moment focused much more on domestic short-term issues and the health of the banking system plus financial inclusion. How do you see this playing out? How would you like to see this playing out?
Yeah. Let me just add to what Tharman said about Singapore. And Singapore in many ways is confronting many of the problems that industrial countries have, but actually doing something about it in very thoughtful and innovative ways. I think again and again when I see the quality of Singapore's administration and the kinds of actions they're thinking about, for example, the continuing education of their people, something we talked about earlier this morning, how they're setting aside money for each individual to go out and get more education as and when they need it. I think that's a very interesting process. I think on the social side, let us not minimize the forces that are traveling around the world. And I think one of the most important sources of concern, which you've seen with some of these Panama reports and so on, it's building into this notion of the illegitimacy of wealth. Earlier, the crisis built up the idea that the bankers were illegitimate, that crony capitalism was illegitimate, all of which makes sense. But that's moved on since Piketty to passive wealth holdings are illegitimate. That if you're a coupon clipper who's clipping what your parents gave you as inheritance, perhaps you shouldn't have so much and it should be redistributed. But now increasingly there's talk about whether entrepreneurial wealth is illegitimate, whether self-made people, whether they should have what they have and whether that's something that's fair game. I think this is dangerous. And the fact that there are occasions when people are found to be hiding their wealth, as in the Panama allegations, essentially contributes to this process of delegitimization. I think what Tharman was talking about improving the opportunities across the board, is extremely important to sustain the legitimacy of wealth. If a whole horde of people, whole sections of society don't feel they have the opportunity, then the focus is going to be on those who have it and who have made it and say that is illegitimate. Yes. And I think that's something very important. It's something that we're seeing elements of in our own society, but certainly it's full-fledged in industrial countries. It's something that we need to worry about at the global level. And it's, I think the answer has to be increase opportunity across the board. And that's where I think some of the actions that are taking place here, the focus on job creation is extremely important. Now, that's where when you think about finance, it has to be with a purpose. And I think it has to be as handmaiden to entrepreneurship. Finance can't create entrepreneurship, but the financier can help the entrepreneur finance enterprise. It can help the householder manage risks and so on. And so with that in mind, helping the enterprise, helping the householder, and also helping government raise money, we have to figure out the appropriate markets, the appropriate institutions. You talked about Mumbai as an international financial center. I think that may well happen down the line. But I think we need to do a lot of things to make our banking sector more vibrant. The entry of a whole set of new banks, of different kinds of banks, will help. But also improving the capabilities of the existing banks is extremely important, which is why the asset cleanup is part of the answer. And of course, markets. We need to strengthen markets. We need to allow a whole set of new instruments, a whole set of new participants. Day before yesterday, we announced the attempt to get retail participants into the GSEC market. We have a whole lot of new technology which allows this to happen. And we have to make sure we can do this in a safe way. So I think there's a lot we have to do. I think of Mumbai as an international financial center as an outcome once we do it. But let's focus on the steps in making the financial sector more vibrant. And that's where I think the Deputy Prime Minister's discussion about the kinds of linkages we can have. And one can even think about linkages on the financial side. Some elements of legal services provided in Singapore for the issuance of securities, either in Mumbai or in Singapore, which could be rupee denominated. I mean, there's so many, I wanted to slip this in somewhere. Let me slip it in. I've heard professionals in India talk about Singapore as India's most livable city. So the point is, there are ties that can be built, and there are natural affinities between India and Singapore which we can build on, and I think it's very valuable to do that.
Okay. Thank you very much. We now move to questions from the floor. I think there are mics around, and the lady up here in front. Can we get a mic there? Yeah. If you don't mind, just for the benefit of everyone present, do please introduce yourself. And if you're addressing a question to any one of our two distinguished speakers, then do please say so.
This is Preeti Davra. I write a column for Mint. My question is to both the speakers, and the question is on South Asia. According to a World Bank report, it's one of the fastest growing regions in the world. I'd like to know, from Singapore and India's point of view, what do the speakers see as an opportunity that did not exist before geopolitically and also in trade and business?
Well, I would say, first, there's opportunity to benefit from connectivity. And in that regard, there's clearly opportunity within South Asia itself. But if you think about the basis on which countries have done well, about the way they've specialized, the way they've complemented each other, sometimes connectivity with countries that are very different from you provides even more benefits. Countries that are at different stages of economic development, that have different specializations, it provides tremendous benefit. So I would say connectivity within South Asia is an opportunity, but connectivity between South Asia and East Asia still has a lot of mileage left in it. East Asia is still seeing that being played out, even in the context of the inshoring into China that I was talking about. You're still getting a lot of benefits going to Vietnam, to Indonesia, and the like. Countries which do not have very different natural endowments or human capital advantages compared to India, for instance. And I would say if you look at the strength of Indian corporates, Indian professionals, Indian experts in various fields, I think we're not fully exploiting or maximizing the potential of what that can bring to the Indian economy.
I really don't have anything to add to that. I think that connectivity is extremely important. Lots of potential for increased trade within the region, lots of potential for increased financial services. We, of course, are working with many of the countries in South Asia in various fora, including, for example, we have a swap agreement with many of the, with all the central banks. And that swap agreement has actually been used by some of the countries. So broadly, we can build, there's a lot to build on, and there's a long way to go. But I think physical connectivity will be extremely important in this process.
Okay, there's a hand that went up at the back first, and then they'll, oh well, we have 4 hands. I'll try and cover everybody, but the gentleman right at the back.
Good morning, sir. My question is to Deputy Prime Minister. Governor has mentioned in brief that hiding money, because many reports and the officials who keep a tab on the black money, they have reported saying Singapore is the emerging hub for most of the Indians to hide their money. Your perspective on that? And second important part, when you talk about partnership, it's a partnership between two investigative agencies as well. So LR has been sent against Lalit Modi a year back. There's not a single response from Singapore to the Indian government. What's your perspective on that? Lalit Modi.
Thank you. We'll take 1 or 2 other questions, and then, yes, over here. Just 1 question, please, each. There are others also waiting.
Yeah, I am Captain Richard Siquera, Director of Marine Maritime. I have a very important question. Just let me frame it. 30 years ago, Deng Xiaoping said China must learn from Singapore. And cut a long story short, they have implemented a lot of policies. It has come to a very high degree of development. We lag behind. How can Singapore teach India in its planning, city-state, smart cities, trade and investment, to be what Singapore is today in another 30 years? Second highest per capita income, greater reserves in foreign exchange than India, and other things.
Okay, we've got it. So we have 3 questions, so you can choose which you want to address.
Well, first, I should address the point about, I didn't catch the exact words you used, but the idea that, Indians were hiding money in Singapore, if I can summarize what you said. Singapore's totally open to scrutiny. We're not some shady offshore center with coconut palms. We're totally open to scrutiny. And I would say we should scrutinize every jurisdiction in the world, including, by the way, states within the United States. Everyone should be open to scrutiny. We do not protect any holy cows in Singapore. Let me make that quite clear. On your question about smart cities and what can be learned, let me say that I really see this intrinsically as a journey of mutual learning. India may, in aggregate, be behind the curve in the quality of its cities, but India has innovations that are ahead of many in the same area. It's a bit of a paradox. Overall, an environment that's messy, weak, and this is what Prime Minister Modi is trying to tackle, but they're already, maybe almost because of the of how people have been held back, they're somehow leapfrogging, and they're innovations that are in advance of the rest of the world. If you look at the way the digital revolution is being used to empower rural individuals, let alone software engineers, enabling them to scale up, to aggregate what they can do, and even to reach global markets as individuals or just as collectives, I think it's really impressive. So for Singapore, this is not a journey of teaching India or lending our expertise to India, but of participating in our journeys together, because we think we will also learn something from you on this journey.
Raghu, do you want to come in? Okay, there were a couple of other questions over here. There's a hand went up there. I can see a lot of hands. I'll try and accommodate as much as we can. Yes.
Akhil Shahani from the Shahani Group of Colleges. I'd actually talk specifically about collaboration opportunities in skilling and higher education between Singapore and India. Are there any initiatives that the Singapore government is doing to promote collaboration opportunities for education entrepreneurs like myself?
And I think there was a lady at the back who had a hand up. I'll come back this side.
Hello, good morning. My name is Lata Mohandas. I'm from Datacom, Incom Datacom. I wear into data services. My question is to Mr. Rajan. There's been a lot of talk and comparison between India and Singapore. What I would like to know is that the infrastructure projects and infrastructure companies in India are facing a huge liquidity crunch. In spite of the easing measures that you have taken, banks are not lending. And we know in Singapore, infrastructure is top-notch. I mean, that's what's made it a world-class city. So my question to you, Mr. Rajan, is what are you going to do? I also heard you mention a few days ago that you were going to be allowing foreign investment into infrastructure projects and for foreign companies to be able to borrow. So what are the what measures are you going to take to hedge the currency risks involved to avoid the 1997 financial crisis? That was mainly led by infrastructure projects the currency falling and not being able to meet commitments.
I'll talk about the schools. So on skills training and education, one of the key features of the Singapore system is an emphasis on skills training as distinct from traditional academic learning. And particularly beyond the age of 16, there's a very strong emphasis even today on skills as a way of developing the individual and as a way of, at the same time, serving the needs of an economy. The lessons from Singapore's institutional framework, as well as the way in which we devise curriculum and try to keep it up to date and industry relevant, are of interest to India and a range of other countries. We now have a project going in Delhi. We've started something in Rajasthan as well, quite specialized in Rajasthan. I think it's to do with skills in the tourism sector. But these are lessons we are very happy to impart and to collaborate with India on. But I just want to make that point, that all over Asia, there was an overemphasis on the academic route to advancement. It's not matching needs in industry, and it will lead, as we're already seeing in places like Korea, even China, it leads to great frustration on the part of people graduating from colleges. So we've got to re-gear and orient ourselves towards a skills journey for a very significant part of our workforce, starting in the college years and continuing through life at regular intervals during their career. That's what we are embarked on in Singapore. We call it Skills Future, and it's about continuous infusions of knowledge and expertise at different stages of your career. We're developing an infrastructure, and it's going to be a very important journey for us going forward.
So, on the issue of infrastructure and hedging, I mean, our aim in the macro stabilization that the Deputy Prime Minister talked about is broadly to make the exchange rate less and less of an issue that investors have to worry about. We have, in the past, intervened on both sides to minimize volatility. But if we move towards our inflation target of around 4%, then the years of the past where you had extreme volatility in the rupee because the rupee inflation in India was much higher than the world, will become a thing of the past. But even putting that aside, if you look over long horizons, 5 to 10 years, you will find that the depreciation in the rupee essentially matches inflation differentials. And therefore, anybody who invests at rupee rates gets an appropriate return to match the kind of depreciation risk that they're taking. Put differently, if a foreign investor wants to lend to India over a long run for infrastructure projects, the value of the rupee at the end of the project is probably a second-order concern, should be a second-order concern.
So my question is to the Deputy Prime Minister. So God forbidding Donald Trump wins the election. What is going to happen to the American economy? What is going to happen to the Indian economy? And what is going to happen to the Singapore economy?
Gosh. And the last question, the gentleman in the corner there. You wanted somebody else here? Oh, okay. And one more there. Okay. Yeah.
My name is Alok Gupta. I run a full-scale manufacturing marketing business in this region. My question is really triggered by the global trade that you talked about. It's declining, and of course we have the experience of almost 25 years of globalization, low tariff barriers, and product moving across. With this experience, we now, let's say, see that a huge capacity got created. Let's talk of steel sector. Huge capacities got created in China. The capacities around the world are now closing down. The commodity prices went up, and there was so-called dumping across. Now, in view of this experience, how do you view the kind of model of globalization which came into being, and how do you see it moving forward? This is for both of you.
Okay, and the final question from there, please, at the back.
Shirish Apte. I'm formerly Citigroup Asia Pacific, and I live in India's most livable city, Singapore. The question, I'd like to go back to global trade and address the question both to the Deputy Prime Minister and to the Governor. There's a clamoring today in Europe for anti-dumping duties from the steel industry. The United States has already done that, and I think here in India also a number of corporates are worried about what China's doing to India's trade. Equally, the political rhetoric in the presidential election is very anti-trade. Are you concerned that politicians might, as an expedient, simply clamp down on the free trade, which has actually led to growth in global economy?
Okay, last comments, and then we'll...
Well, the questions, I think, allow us to summarize a fair bit of what we were saying. There are two problems with current day policy responses. First, this borrows from what both Raghu and I were saying, is that monetary policy, in attempting to stimulate economies and nurse them back to health, has in fact relied too much on exchange rates as a means of transmission. I don't think anyone can argue that quarter percentage point, 25 basis point, or even 50 basis point, or even 1 percentage point change in interest rates can make a huge difference to the type of investments that would now qualify from funding. But what's really happened is exchange rates have moved in a big way, and they've led to a rotation of demand from one part of the world to another, rather than the creation of demand. So it started with the United States, with the weakening of the US dollar after the crisis. It then moved on to Japan, 40% weakening of the yen. And it's then moved on to Europe, 20% weakening of the euro. And this merely leads to a rotation of demand because of significant effects on competitiveness between countries and regions, rather than the creation of demand. That's one problem with the current approach. Second problem is what was referred to in the second question, which is how do we deal with overcapacity and overhangs? We know the problems in steel, cement in China and elsewhere. And the market mechanism does exist for dealing with this problem. It's about restructuring, and it's about the write-down of bad loans and bad assets. That's the market mechanism. And in fact, it has to be said that that's the strength of the American economy. They restructure faster than most, and they come back up with new players coming in, buying assets cheap, and trying to combine them with other assets and make good. But if we simply hold on to what we have, if we hold on to excess capacity, and we don't restructure, we are keeping bad assets on the books of banks, and we are also exporting deflation within our own countries and internationally, which is not at all optimal. So if you take these two types of policy responses, exchange rate, monetary policy that really has its effect through exchange rates, which merely rotates demand rather than creates demand, and secondly, not moving decisively enough to restructure industries that have overcapacity, not just for the short term, but for the medium to long term, we really get a suboptimal situation. You get volatility, you get deflation, and you don't get a real lift in productivity and incomes. So what we're really saying is let's focus on the fundamentals of the real economy, which have to do with skills, technology, and connectivity. There's still so much we can do in each of these areas: skills, technology, connectivity. If we do that well, I think it gives more confidence to ordinary people that their jobs can be preserved, or if their jobs are no longer relevant, they can be trained for another job. If we do that well and give the middle class some confidence in the future, give everyone confidence in the future, we are more likely to see a politics that doesn't lead to this surreptitious closing of trade, tightening of trade, raising of barriers. It's more likely to be a world where you see openness because people know that they are being equipped with skills, they do have a future. And they see prosperity in their own neighborhoods and communities, not just somewhere far away.
Just 2 cents on that. I absolutely agree with everything Tharman said. But the additional element, going back to what to some extent he said earlier, is that the beneficiaries of free trade today are distinct in many countries from the sufferers from free trade. And it's very hard to make the two meet. So for example, you mentioned a certain politician in the United States. A lot of the people who seem to be sympathizing with him are people who've seen factories closing down in their neighborhoods, who've seen manufacturing disappear, and who therefore, for a while, were rescued by the housing boom because they found jobs in construction, etc. But after the housing bust, are now really angry, not just because they've bought houses which are now terribly underwater, but because they don't have jobs, many going on disability. So there is a real issue there. But the issue is not stopping trade. If you ask the question, who is the world's biggest outsourcer in services? Let me ask you that question. Who's the biggest outsourcer in services in the world? I think many of you would think India. It's actually the United States. Legal services, consulting services, financial services, they're the biggest outsourcer. But the people providing those services, very different from the people hurting from manufacturing imports. So I think it goes back to what Tharman said, that we need to find ways to improve the quality of life, the access to opportunities, the capability of doing good work across the board, but especially amongst the weaker segments of society. That is as true of Singapore, as true of the United States, as it is true for India. So I think we all have our work cut out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid we are completely out of time, so I would like to hand you back to the organizers after thanking our two speakers for their very thoughtful comments and for taking all the questions. Thank you both. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Deputy Prime Minister, Dr. Rajan and Mr. Nainan, for such an insightful and engaging session. DPM Tharman will now present tokens of appreciation to Dr. Rajan and Mr. Nainan for joining him on the interactive session. The book entitled Nation at Play, A History of Sport in India is authored by Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of South Asian Studies, Dr. Ronajoy Sen, and this book has been recently launched in several places, both in India and Singapore. First at the Jaipur Literary Salon, followed by a book fair in Kolkata, and then just 2 weeks ago in India. 2 weeks ago in Singapore, the third launch. Yeah, so one more. We would like to have a group photograph with the three of you and some of the organizers. Yeah. Okay. DPN, Dr. Rajan, and Mr. Nana will remain on stage as we invite the organizers for group photography. Ambassador Pillai, His Excellency Mr. T.K. Lim. No, first is a photography session, Chairman, yeah. And Mr. Nainat Kirby for the group photography, please. Sir, we will just take a group photography. Yeah. Please up before that. Sorry. Sorry, Chairman, the photograph is just easier. Thank you, DPM and everyone. Thank you. We still have one more item, so we would really appreciate if you could take your seats. We have a vote of thanks, so we would appreciate if you could just be seated for a couple of minutes. Okay, now to deliver his vote of thanks, we have with us the Deputy Chairman of CII Western Region, Mr. Kirby, to say a few words. Mr. Kirby, please. I'm sorry.
Well, I'll be a little brief. Dignitaries present here, ladies and gentlemen, we had a wonderful session. I would like to thank Deputy Prime Minister and Dr. Rajan for coming here this morning and sharing their insights with us. I would also like to thank ISAS for bringing this business delegation to Bombay. We are particularly delighted when Deputy Prime Minister reminded us of the positives in India and also emphasizing about education and skilling, which we are passionate about. And Governor Rajan for talking about the natural ties and affinities between India and Singapore. Sessions like these go a long way in increasing cooperation between India and Singapore. I would also like to thank, in conclusion, my friend Mr. Nainan for moderating the session. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for kindness. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us today. While you're still making some moves around the room, let me just share with you that today's proceedings will be uploaded on the Institute of South Asian Studies website in a few weeks' time. So do look out for it. Thank you and have a great day. And do join us for the buffet lunch just outside at the foyer. Thank you once again and have a great day ahead. Thank you.